We're seeing now Oz Hashem Yisborach Maseches Peah Daf Yud Beis. We're starting with the Mishna Halacha Dalet. Klal Omru B'Peah. They said a big rule regarding Peah. Kol Shehu. We're starting Yud Gimel. Yud Gimel. Is boydish me'ina min ador. Kisif tzoy karmecha sa'oylel. Ma'at shma mino. It says in the Torah, Kisif tzoy karmecha lo sa'oylel acharecha. Rabbi Yoina lo dagdek. The word oylel means you shouldn't be so picky about it. If you shouldn't pick out every tiny piece, it means you should leave over by the edge. Now it says how does Svara mean you need to leave Peah? You learn it out. Has these qualities that you gather all the things at the same time, and also you can put it in for a long-term storage. Olive oil and the wine. So that's why you learn out that only if it has these two qualities, that's like a tosam ke'achas, machnisam lekiyim. Imazayz v'kerem miyachadim shehem chayavim bebikurim chayavim bepeya akol דבר שחייב bebikurim. So if you make this limud from Zayas v'kerem, you might say only things that are chayav bikurim, because you know shiva saminim are chayav bikurim. Even rice and millet. Now we'll go these two things. We'll go focus on that. What's with olives and wine? Yom Zayas yom kerem. Shi'ilu nem Zayas nem kerem. Iso yom Zayas shu patim na peret chayav b'peah. Kerem shu chayav b'peret lo yechayav b'peah. Since kerem is chayav b'peret, lo yechayav b'peah. It has a very different chiyuv. Peret means that when you pick the grapes, some of it falls off. Some tiny grapes fall on the ground, but that's not shaykh only by a kerem, not by a zayis. So I might say that since it is chayav b'peret, it has already a chiyuv on something else. Lo yechayav b'peah. How about if it would only say that didn't pay by kerem and not by olive? He's only a kerem shall chayav b'peah, peret chayav b'peah. Zayis she'ein chayav b'peret, ein chayav b'peah. Svara opposite. Since it has already a chiyuv, has another chiyuv. But this does not have a chiyuv of peret. It doesn't have a chiyuv of peah either. That's why these two things must be mentioned separately: the chiyuv peah by zayis and the chiyuv peah by kerem. Yotza zayis lim the akol alon is peah. V'yetze kerem alon is peret. So the Gemara is asking a question. How about maybe kerem comes to teach on everything that's peret? So the Torah only mentions peret by gefen, doesn't mention by other trees. Only a thing that says by both of them can teach us. I think the meaning is that since the Torah does not specify, so we know for sure that by zayis there's no kerem, because the Torah doesn't specify. So it's obviously that peret is not noig by zayis. So we cannot use the peret by kerem for everything else, since by zayis it's definitely not noig. That's why I need to say Peah. That even though it's a chiddush, it still remains the general ruling. Even though kerem has a special thing of parrot, but why shouldn't it be in the general rule of Peah? If only kerem would come out. So just lecture say after lilmud chiyuv Peah mitvua. After she yotze kerem bezayis, ilan bezayis nem kerem, iso immer zayish she potem a parrot chayv Peah. Kerem shel chayv parrot ye potem a Peah. So we have something else that's also yotze, and we see zayis does not have parrot and does have Peah. So we say kerem that does have parrot does not have Peah. You might say that this is the way to learn this limud. So that's why we have this special pasuk that needs to teach you that it is Peah by kerem also. Don't say, just like by Zayas, there is only one of the two things. What is that? Peah and not parrot. So here, since there is parrot, there is not Peah. So he has to teach you that there is Peah by kerem also. How about somebody comes to work in the field? It shows even anything. Melilas is not doesn't keep long because it's wet stalks. So we see from there that a worker can eat even if he picks fruit that are not meant to long-term storage. Tana Rabbi Akiva says, "Roitvei tomorrow turmana Peah." The dates that are still they're picked while before they become ripe. Why? You can take them off in the early stage, so it's not likatosam ke'achas. Yos Omer Rabbi Yosef Rabbi, the my time the Rabbanim. They all ferment at once. Means you're right that you can pick early and then later, but the final stage happens together. The kulkus is the edible root of a bean, has a din of yirakas, of vegetables, like the maisrus or the shvias. So the din is that you have to go basaliki tosai after the time when you pick it, not when it took root. But regarding the hilchos of Shemitah and regarding the time of maisrus, and also the Peah bikurim means bikurim. It's very interesting here because what means bikurim? Bikurim is not noig. Not noig by vegetables b'chlal. It's only noig by shivas aminim. The Peah we understand. Peah means that it's yerek potter. It's potter from Peah because yerek is potter. And darim trich. If somebody makes a neder and not going to eat yerek, could be that root is not considered a vegetable. The oilam who knows. And we go on to Mishna 5. The oilam forever a person who knows Mishna Peah potter and amaisrus atchiyam areich. So a person can always add. He gives one section Peah, another section Peah, and that whatever he says should be Peah. The poor man that picks that does not need to separate Meiser. But when is that? Achi Miruach. Until he does Miruach. So here it's from Mishnah hinting us that you can give Peah from Tolish also. Let's say you finished already cutting and you decide you want to give, besides what you gave in the end of the field, you want to give also from Tolish. Or you can interpret the Mishnah that the person forgot to give from the standing grain and then he decides to give from Tolish. So whichever way, it's Mishnah hints here that you can give Peah from Talish, from cut grain already. However, what happens? Now we know that Peah is part of a Maestros. That's a din that since it's meant only for the poor man, it's hefker. Even though it's only meant for the poor man, since it's hefker, it's part of a Maestros. However, if he made already Miruach means he flattened out the big pile of the grain, it's the final stage, then it's Nikbala Meiser. And if you want to give Peah, you must first take off the Meiser and then you can give Peah. A person can take from the goyren, means the seeds that he just finished threshing, and he can use them to plant a new crop. If he did already the flattening, then if he wants to take off from that pile for seeds, he has to first give meiser. Also, in Meichel Behem V'chayev Oifi Potem and a Meisrus Atchi Miruach. The Rabbi Akiva. Another halacha. Kohen v'Levi. Shalachas hagoyin. Meiser shalahem Atchi Yamarchu. Oh, so this is an interesting halacha. So there used to be a certain business that a Kohen and a Levi, they were the ones that were they had a very big profitable business in buying off a pile of tevuah. Why? Very simple. Because the person that has that pile only gets 90 pounds out of 100 to keep. The Kohen gets 100 pounds. So it's worth for the person to sell it for a Kohen, he can make more money off it. And the Kohen is a Levi can buy it and sell the whole thing, besides the Truma, but with Meiser Rishon. So they were the ones that could pay the best price. They're the ones who pay the best price. So we say you can only do this Achi Emerchu. No. If you do it before Miruach, it's not Chal the Chiev yet. So then you can do this trick. But if after Miruach, no. We say, okay, you bought it, but you have to also give somebody else, you have to give the Meiser. Somebody who gives for Hegdish, he gives away his whole pile for Hegdish, and then he redeems it, he's Chayv Meisers. Unless the Gizber, the Gabbai did the flattening, that was done under his supervision, you redeem it after that, you don't have to give Meisers. Hifish bikurim kirim Miruach, potem mit truma gedoyla. If a person is mafish bikurim from a tree that's already flattened, from a pile that's flattened, potem mit truma gedoyla. Is part of from truma. Means even though you might say that since it's Miruach, you have to first give Truma. He says no. You can take Bikurim and you don't need to take off Truma Gedoyla. Omer Abchagikum Reb Yase Masnit Omer Kain. We can see that from our Mishnah. The oilem hu noisem shempei patim na meise atche mereich. Ha mir chayev ma she'en kein betruma. Peah patim na teruma af pi shehifish es a peah ach Miruach. So interesting halacha here. Even though he took Peah after Miruach, the only thing we say is he has to separate Meiser. But Teruma / Bikurim is not necessary to give out if he did that. Even if he did that after Miruach, you can take the Peah and just you have to separate Meiser. The only has to separate Meiser from it, but the Teruma and Bikurim you don't have to worry about, even though the Peah was given after Miruach. let's just go one tiny Gemara, one more. This is going to be the end of 13 and 14. Leim av bikum yechayev af bishleim merach. So he's asking a question. Let us say bikurim should be chayev b'teruma, even loy merach. You say bikurim is pater even after Miruach. Hifish bikurim b'krim and murach pater metruma gedoyla. I would say the opposite, just the opposite. Even if it's not Miruach and it take bikurim, you should be chayav to separate. So we see from this that bikurim, since it comes before everything, you don't have to give truma from bikurim. And we said before, even if it's memorach, Hirkish bikurim, the bikurim, you don't have to separate. Once you gave bikurim, the kohen does not have to take off truma gedoyla from that. It's interesting, the Gemara here, the raya that he brings, Emir Chayev Mash'enkim B'Truma. So what do we see from this? That after Miruach, even you made already Miruach, Peah is potter from Truma, and Peah is potter from Bikurim, and Bikurim are potter from Truma. It's very roundabout way, because we're talking here about that even though he did Miruach, you do not need to give. You can separate Peah without giving Truma or Bikurim. So we see in general that Miruach doesn't mean yet Yechayev and everything. So if you Miruach Mafish Bikurim, you don't need to eat Truma. It's a little bit roundabout, and that is the best pshat I can give here in this to offer for this section of Gemara. Okay, this is the end of Daf Yud Gimel and Yud Dalet.